I watched football. Yesterday, my television was on football from 12 noon till midnight, nonstop with no breaks.
Amen.
No breaks whatsoever.
The only outdoors I saw, I think at one point I looked out the window and then I realized it was a mistake when I flipped back to the Red Zone channel.
Right.
I will give you my 4 o'clock Red Zone report. So we were talking about this last week.
Yeah.
Me locked into the Red Zone channel. And man, between like the 9/11 tribute and Red Zone being back, I seriously, at 1 o'clock yesterday, tears in my eyes. Not ashamed to admit it. Full-blown tears for good reasons and for dumb reasons. And then so when I get to 4 o'clock, we have the Dolphins-Patriots game.
Yes.
That's on CBS.
That's right.
But I've got the Red Zone channel. Now, I'm curious to see what's going on with Kansas City and Cleveland.
Right.
But every time they tried to show me Broncos-Giants, man, I could not press that jump button fast enough. I am sitting there and I'm like, what am I doing?
Yes.
I'm watching Teddy Bridgewater rifle passes. I don't need to see this.
And you loved every second of it.
So I was back and forth. 4 o'clock was a busy one for me. One of the things that I look at, and there's a lot to break down from all of this, I am positive that this level of confidence will backfire. But the amount of things that I was right about early on, like I didn't expect to be this right this fast about so many things in the NFL. Would you like to hear my list?
Let's see what you got. Let's see if I agree that you were actually right on some of these things.
The guy that comes on before us, Colin Cowherd, he
right.
gives you the Colin was right, Colin was wrong.
Right, the Aaron Rodgers show.
Brandon was just right. That's all. Aaron Rodgers was part of it.
Yes.
I thought that they would have issues this year. I didn't pick them to win the division. I thought we would see the Packers as one of the teams that made it to the playoffs last year that had a good season take a step back. What I didn't expect, even though that was my thought, I didn't think we'd see that in week 1.
No.
Where it's obvious. I mean, they're not going to get blown out like that every week. But the fact that that happened in week 1 and that it's because of their quarterback,
yes,
who had all this controversy, who looked like, even though I don't think he was, it looked like Rodgers was tanking yesterday.
Without a doubt. I mean, at best, you can claim he was mentally dispersed. But
There's a nice way to put it.
It's easy to look at that and be like, he wanted to send a message to say, oh, this is how you guys feel. This is what I'll do. Because the way he played in yesterday's game was so atrocious that I couldn't grab myself to believe that it was actually him.
His passer rating yesterday was 36. 36.
Jeez.
I don't think he's ever done that before. It was brutal. And so their season's going to be rough. I mean, if you have Packers stock, aren't you selling it today?
I'm selling some of it. I might not come full off of my entire portfolio, but I'm definitely calling the broker and being like, we got to unload at least half of this, because there's what we saw today, even if it doesn't continue, is evident that they're not winning the Super Bowl. No chance.
The other side of that same game, Jameis Winston. I told you guys this was going to work. I told you he was going to be excellent. 5 touchdown passes with 0 turnovers against the Green Bay Packers.
Because he didn't throw the ball for the whole game. 150 yards of total pass.
Every time he dropped back to throw a pass, it was a touchdown.
Yeah, for 8 yards. That's what it was, an 8-yard touchdown pass every single time.
You can't tell me that Jameis didn't look really good and really comfortable in that offense.
He looked comfortable. I wouldn't go as far to say good, but he did look comfortable. And I will look to see what else he does. The 5 touchdowns is extremely impressive. I will give you that. From a stat sheet perspective, it's extremely impressive. But when I saw that 150 lined up next to it, I was like, well, what did he actually do besides throw touchdowns?
He's not buying that one. I told you also prior to the season starting that the Bills would still be good, but they're not going to be this unstoppable juggernaut. And the Pittsburgh Steelers came into town, lock, by the way, plus 6.5 cashes, and smacked them around in Buffalo.
Yeah, that one caught me by surprise, because first of all, the way the game was going, it felt like Buffalo was going to break out at any moment in time. So as I'm flipping through, that's one game I keep flipping through because I need the Steelers to lose. So I'm expecting this is going to happen. And it's looking good and it's looking promising. And then at one point, it's like they just broke down and decided we're not the team we were last season. And they couldn't do anything to recover. And the Steelers like you were saying earlier, one of those great organizations just made all the right moves at the right time and was able to win that game.
It's crazy how that works. The good organizations just find a way, even when it looks like they're starting to break down, they still find a way. They're going to scratch and claw. I don't know how good the Steelers are going to be on the year, but that's the kind of game you're going to get from Pittsburgh, whether they end up winning it or not, is that you're going to have to fight in order to get it. TJ Watt's an absolute beast.
Yes.
And they have talent on that team. It just really comes down to, can they run the football, which yesterday they couldn't. Najee Harris did not look like he was worthy of a first-round pick yesterday. And Big Ben's still somebody that I don't really trust if we're talking about division winners, but that defense is stout.
Yes, it is. And he can get the job done. And if Big Ben takes the Trent Dilfer role, and he's like, listen, my job is to not lose the game. Defense, do what you're supposed to do. I'll throw some big throws and make sure we score enough points. But other than that, if he can do that, the Steelers might surprise people.
Now, remember, I'm reminding you how right I am. And this one probably didn't crystallize for a lot of you yesterday, but let me spell it out for you.
Come on.
I don't think this is exactly what you think I'm going with. We'll get to Tua in a bit. The Indianapolis Colts are going to win the AFC South. And I know you're thinking, well, didn't they just lose to the Seahawks? Russell Wilson owned them. 28-16 was the final. Indianapolis barely showed up in that game. It's not so much about Indianapolis. It's about everybody else.
It most certainly is about everybody else.
The Jags aren't winning that division.
Nope.
The Texans just played their best game of the season, so you can basically wrap that one up. And then the Titans just let Kyler Murray do whatever he pleased yesterday. They're not winning the division either. So just by default, Indianapolis is going to end up winning the AFC South.
You're right. We're not ready to crystallize that one quite yet. At least I'm not, because I still give space for another 16 games for the Titans to get it together and figure it out. And I just don't trust the quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts. I just don't.
Well, I understand why, but it's just about the rest of that division.
Yeah.
Indianapolis is good enough, and good enough at the simple things where they will find a way to be the best team in that division, because we know for a fact that two of these teams are not going to win the division. And then so it just comes down to, can they figure it out enough to beat out Tennessee? You watched that Tennessee team yesterday.
Oh, it was terrible.
They got torched defensively.
Yeah, that was the one game that I could not take my eyes off of, just because of how great Arizona was playing. They were playing phenomenal everywhere on the field. Defense, special teams, offense, running game. When you had Kyler Murray cornered, he made a play out of it. There was one play where he ran like 300 yards for a 7-yard gain into a touchdown. It was fantastic. And even A.J. Green was looking like the Bengals should have never gotten rid of him to begin with. It was crazy.
Oh, speaking of old wide receivers, I thought the Titans signed Julio Jones. What happened to that? Also, the Rams look like they're Super Bowl ready. Can we just fast forward to that part where they're bludgeoning people in the playoffs? That team is so good.
It really is. And that defense is very, very scary. Very scary.
Matt Stafford looked – what's the best word to describe? He looked like he was at home.
That's exactly what I was just getting ready to say. Those were the words I was going to say. He looked like he was at home, like he finally landed in the place that he was always supposed to be.
Now, let me tell you the thing that you probably think I'm going to tell you of how right I was. Now, I didn't pick Miami to win, but –
You've got eyes.
And here we are again.
Yes.
I'm still confused.
Why?
Tua is...
You didn't listen. That's why you're confused.
Do you know those paintings or those pictures that I forget what they're called. If you know the name, text it in at 50857. There's a name. I think there's a name for them. When you look at it, and it's either like an old lady or a pretty woman, or it's like a bird or a tiger.
Oh, yeah, depending on how you look at it.
Yeah. That's Tua. Because you could look at some of his plays in that game and go, okay, he was efficient. He got the job done. He went into New England with a bad offensive line, running backs that did nothing, receivers that dropped the football, and he went and got a win for his team. That was his job. Go into New England, get a win, which is not an easy thing to do. But you can also look at the same picture and go, that guy did nothing spectacular.
You're absolutely right.
Not one single thing. There wasn't one play of that game where I looked and went, damn. And that's exactly what I experienced last year with him.
But that's always been the problem with Tua, and that's what we've been telling you. He's not spectacular enough to carry this team to the promised land that they want to go to. If you want, he is Ryan Fitzpatrick young. That is what he is, and that's what he's been so far. And until he shows me a reason to say he will be something different, that's who he's going to stay. Mac Jones looked magnificent in that game, and Tua looked comparable.
Yeah, Mac Jones did look like the better quarterback.
He really did.
But he didn't get the job done. Tua did. And that's what Tua needs to do. Tua needs to win. It's not like I didn't see the same thing that all of you saw last year. My thing was we saw the same thing. It was a very limited sample size, and he had a lot working against him.
Right.
The same thing applies to yesterday, which is why we find ourselves in the exact same place. We're all just going to yell at a wall, and nobody's going to move. And it's like every other argument we have this day and age. I'm not going to change my opinion of Tua based on what I saw yesterday. He went into New England and faced a loaded Belichick defense in Foxborough. That's not an easy – with wide receivers that were dropping the football, an offensive line that graded terribly according to our friends at PFF.com, and running backs that couldn't make anybody miss. No quarterback is going to come out of that looking special.
He beat a quarterback that started his first game ever.
Who you said looked really good.
He did look really good, but that doesn't mean he's a fantastic quarterback.
I never said he was fantastic. All I'm saying is that where we were before – if we can all agree, whether you're on the positive end or the negative end of Tua, there's a giant question mark that looms over him. Yes. Even I, a truther, can admit the question has not yet been answered. All I've been saying all along is that I think that when the question is answered, it's going to be positive. Yesterday provided that same giant question mark that we've seen the whole time, but there's no answer here.
But the question that I have for you is, what answers the question for you? Because I don't think you have a mark in eternity that says, I'll know Tua is it or isn't it when I see this. Because if you continue to put on the offensive line, the running backs, the this, the that, they built that team to be substantial for him. His offensive line isn't the greatest in the world, and it could be better, but he's got to build over that. Like, what is going to be the thing that allows you to finally say, Tua is mediocre at best?
Well, no, you're leading me into saying that. I think that we're not going to find out for another couple weeks, but I do think we'll get the answer early on this season. We were never going to get it in New England, and if anything, we should be impressed with what happened. He went into that stadium against that coach, against that defense, and walked out with a W. That was the most important thing for him to accomplish, and he did that thing. Check that box.
Yes.
He'll get Will Fuller back next week. That'll help the offense. You go up against the Buffalo Bills, and life isn't going to be easy then either. I'm thinking probably by like week 3 or 4, we'll be able to say the excuses, if you still need them, are probably – that's a good gauge of where you are. If I still need excuses to explain why Tua is good by week 4, then I will no longer use them because I will realize that I just sound like I'm using them to use them.
Gotcha.
I think that's when we'll figure it out. Up next, I may need to rethink my state of Florida college football rankings. In Florida, I owe you an apology. That is next.